Welcome back to Bazooka Kickboxing and MMA. Today's episode, powered by HAYABUSA, is all about what's missing in modern martial arts training. Today's episode, we're going to break down what's missing in modern martial arts training. I grew up in the old school past where I learned a lot of the basics, the structures, and that old school that we see in those old movies we used to watch on TV. But new martial arts has all been about mixed martial arts, about the training, the jiu-jitsu, the striking, but we lost a lot of the traditional sides of training, that basics, the routine, the discipline, the structure, which I think is really important and is missing in this modern mixed martial arts training we're seeing. So I'm going to break down different areas which I think we've lost, and maybe you might want to go back old school and kind of bring it back into modern day training. A lot of my training that I do now, I still like to keep that key element of old school, and I think that's important because there's a lot of good principles that help not only with your footwork, your stance, but the way you present yourself as a martial artist. It was all about respect and respecting your partners, your training, and it is still there, but it could be a little bit better in my eyes. But the first thing that's missing is the focus on stance training. Any martial art that you did in the past, the karates, the taekwondos, the kung fus, put such a strong influence and strong structure on the footwork. Everything is about stance training. We had our walking stance, the horse stance, the L stance, all different stances that you had to make sure you had good stability, good grounding, good balance. And not only that, every time you strike, you had to return back to that stance and have good form and good technique. You were never off balance, off of control. Even the old school, we had the instructors with the bamboo sticks trying to hit you while you were in your different stances because you need to, one, tighten the muscles, have good strength. I remember being a 10-year-old going for my black belt exam, and I had to not only describe the stance, I had to talk about the angles, about how long the stance should be, and why the stance is that way. So, understanding stances and how they influence your training is really important. I think we need to bring some more of that back. The second thing which they have in old school martial arts, which we're missing now, is learning to snap our technique. A lot of times we learn boxing and Muay Thai in this generation, and everything is about power, power, power. But a lot of good striking is about snapping and controlling the strike to be able to kick and return. So snapping is really important type of striking. There's not just one style. You can't just blast through everything and kind of just knock everything out. You need to set up things up, snap the punches. So we had board breaking. Board breaking is about snapping, learn to hit and return. All of the techniques, all of the strikes, all have that type of influence. Yes, it's missing that power style sometimes. Me coming from a Taekwondo background, we never really worked on those power round kicks, which is important. So I'm glad I learned that in the new modern training. But that kick and return training has really shown to have a good benefit in modern training because a lot of the guys haven't used that type of training. So you'll see it in my mixing of old and new school. I'll use that snap kick because it, one, helps me mix my punches a little bit better and helps with my combinations. And if I'm falling all over the place, I'm not there to be able to counter or defend well. So the snap kick helps you out, or the snap punches as well. Impact isn't about how hard you can throw. If I can stop and pull, I can get more impact and more damage than really pushing through the technique. I've talked about that many times. The third thing that modern martial artists are missing is hip endurance. A lot of times when we kick now, everything is a single style kick. Power, return, power, return. But a lot of times in our old school training, there was a lot of influence on repetitive kicking, keeping the lead side out. And what happens in return is we have these really strong hips. The modern martial artists, if you ask them to maybe keep their leg up and throw 2 or 3 kicks in a row, they don't have the hip strength to be able to do it. They're falling down and they can't balance themselves in that way. So it's important to learn the power side, but having that ability to be able to keep your leg up and control is really important. You might not fight in an MMA fight by keeping your leg up, but having that hip strength and endurance to keep your leg up is important. A nice double side kick, or a lot of times when you'll see in Muay Thai, the power kick and then block right away. They don't have to put their foot down because they have that strength in their hip and the control in their stance. All right, so Sometimes you don't have to train your technique that way. When you're doing your fight training, you're not gonna throw these double, triple side kicks, these repetitive. But go back, build it, and use it as a training routine. Just like our repetitive punches, we need to make sure we strengthen all the muscles that help you with your striking, like our shoulders, our hips, our calves, our hand conditioning. It's all part of putting the small pieces together to get the biggest bang for your buck. The fourth thing that's missing in modern martial arts training is stretching. If you watch every old school movie from the Jean-Claude Van Dammes to the Chuck Norrises, you always saw them stretching. They had the side splits. Every martial artist in the old school days used to do the side splits. Now, probably very few can do it. So what now? We need to really make sure we put our focus on not necessarily our side splits, but stretching in general. We know too much information not to be stretching anymore. Especially as you get older or you're adding weight training, your hips all get a little bit tighter, your shoulder mobility all suffers. So structured routine stretching before, after training, on your days off is really important. And maybe it's a cool idea to make a challenge to be able to do the side splits again. That's something I've been slowly to work on, but me having to go back to more strength work, my hips get really tight. So now I've added stretching twice a day, morning and night, into my routine, and right away I see my kicks a little bit more flashy, a little bit easier to throw, a lot more flexible, okay? And my recovery from my training has been a lot better. So let's get back old school again. Let's put our training in and make it a focus. I know it sucks, I know it hurts, and it's not pleasant, but it's such an important concept that we need in our martial arts training. The fifth and final thing that's missing in modern martial arts is the respect, loyalty, and discipline issue. A lot of times fighters these days are always jumping around different coaches, different teams, so the idea of discipline, loyalty, and respect tends to be lost a lot of times. In the old school days, you always had to treat the hierarchy of respect. So no matter who you were, even as a young kid, if I was a black belt and someone was underneath me in ranking, they had to address you as sir or Mr. So-and-so. Maybe it's not like that now, it's a lot different, but I think the idea of respecting your coach and your teacher is very important aspect. You should be celebrating that person. If someone, for example, if I meet someone who's done an amazing thing in the sport, accomplishments, if I see someone like an Ernesto Hoost, the Peter Aerts, I like to offer these athletes and these people that I've idolized the respect, calling them Mr. Hoost, Mr. Aerts. I think are all important things to show the hierarchy and the respect that tends to be missing in modern martial arts. So I like to make sure simple things like bowing, showing the respect. You'll see a little bit of Muay Thai in the traditional martial arts, but in mixed martial arts, we don't see it as much, so it's something that could be a nice little addition to modern martial arts. It's beautiful to see, again, in the different countries of the Chinas, the Asian cultures, where they get to bow, the sign of respect, and especially before and after competition, before and after pads, before and after sparring, entering your gym, your dojo, is all something that's very nice to add to your martial arts training. All right, so there you go, 5 different things which I think the old school kind of has that we need to build in to our new school training. There's a lot of things that you might use, you might not use, you might agree or disagree, but it's important to get a whole big grasping of your training. Training one way isn't just good enough these days. There's a lot that we learned from the past that we got to kind of add in. Okay, so make sure you keep liking and subscribing to Bazooka Kickboxing and MMA. Make sure you support Hayabusa by going to HAYABUSAfight.com and checking out their T3 boxing gloves, as well as our channel sponsor, Perfect Sports Nutrition. Use code Bazooka20 for 20% off. Make sure you subscribe, you like, you hit the notification bell, and we'll see you here next week at Bazooka Kickboxing and MMA.
I try really hard.
He's so unimpressed.
He's so unhappy.
It's just nothing about this is, to me, nothing about this is intimidating. Like, I wear this, I don't feel confident, I don't feel strong. I'm like, whatever.
You can't even hide it, bro.
No, just
your whole aura is so
let's just
unhappy.
fucking do it. Let's just fucking do it.
Are you gonna do the B-roll then too?
I have to, yeah. Whatever we gotta do, we'll do. I'm good with it.
You don't need karate back?
Absolutely not.
What is that? Is that a broomstick?
So I'm gonna go walk in. What he's gonna be in a horse stance. So you're gonna be in a horse stance. Hands out like this. Hoop. I'm gonna say 1, punch. 2, 3.
It's so fucking
That's what we're gonna do. 4.
That's it. It's gonna be hilarious.